Yeah, like
Wow.
scouting. I believe Myth, when he was on, he mentioned that you were the one who reached out to him when he had like less than 500 viewers, asking if he wants to be on TSM.
Yeah, actually, it's a really funny story because I reached out to him after I saw the clip of,
Summit.
yeah, the 1v1 with Summit.
Yeah.
And he had, I think, like 300 to like 500-ish viewers at the time. And I remember when I reached out to him, he immediately followed, or I followed him on Twitter first, and he immediately followed me back. It wasn't until maybe a week later that I tried to schedule a meeting with him to talk to him about it. And then he was already a TSM fan. So honestly, signing him was kind of easy because immediately, just right when we first got on the call, he's like, I want to join TSM. It's like, okay, well, you should, take some time. And then I remember I ended that conversation with him saying, hey, so is there like, can you introduce me to your mom or your dad? I'd like to talk to them as well. And he says to me, oh, no, I'm good. I'm 18. And it was like,
Wait, was he 18?
he was 18. I think he had just turned 18.
Okay.
But yeah, it was just really funny because he brought up to me that he actually was a Dyrus fan from season 3, and he was like watching TSM content since when he was in middle school. And at the time, it was kind of, for me, recruiting someone that young, I was like, wow, you're watching TSM when you're in middle school? Like, for me, that was like, a couple years ago, but it was like 5 years ago. So, yeah.
I actually have a couple of questions in regards to that. For starters, how do you go about like scouting good talent? And then my second question is just like, does it ever just not work out? And what do you guys usually do in that case? Because I know, some organizations try to take the approach of just like signing a ton of people and figuring out that, some will. Are you guys more deliberate with it? Kind of, what's your procedure like?
Yeah, so I think usually nowadays esports is so big that when a new game comes out, we know on the back end, hey, Valorant is going to be coming out, Project A at the time, for a while now. And you can kind of tell, usually we'll work with the developers. We can kind of tell like what type of game it's going to be. And then you can kind of look at other scenes, usually pro players from other scenes that didn't really make it in their original scene. Like the Valorant case, CSGO pro players who didn't have the most success, they're probably going to jump over. So we're looking at people who probably have some type of competitive experience, because even though it's in another game, usually they're experienced in terms of working with a team, working in a team environment, working with an organization. And usually they are at the top level of their game overall as a whole, even though they didn't like make it through and become the star player of that genre. And then secondly, we of course look at the ladders. So I'm a huge nerd, and I also follow all the different online forums, like Reddit, all the different Discords. And so usually like when names pop up, like, oh, this person's popping off, usually pretty early on, and we'll be able to see it.
So do you guys mainly go for like players that are super good, or do you guys look at like content creators as well?
Yes.
Fed wants a chance.
No, I'm asking for a friend, sorry.
So for the pro team, we're just looking at people who are really skilled. And word gets around fast on like who's skilled and who's not. So at the beginning of Apex, Dizzy was a name that blew up, and we actually were talking to Dizzy before he blew up as well. He ended up signing to NRG before we got too deep into conversations with him. But he was someone who was already a streamer, and he was playing. I know he played CS at a pretty top level, even though he didn't like make it as a CS pro. And so you can kind of see at least skill throughout a person's history of like gaming, as long as they're like broadcasting it. And in terms of content creators, right now TSM I think we've started diversifying and signed a lot of content creators that aren't big gamers. Greek is a good one, where he's he still games, but he's not signed for his skill in gaming.
Clip it, ship it, boys. Clip it and ship it.
Yeah, no, Greek is awesome, yeah.